For the upcoming activities, we recommend that you have a lamp or flashlights, tape, scissors or an X-Acto knife, white paper or poster board, an assortment of objects, some solid and some transparent, a cardboard box, white fabric or cloth napkin or even paper towel, pencils, markers, and art supplies.
Hello everyone, my name is Katie. I'm a community programmer with the Greater Sudbury Public Library, and thanks for joining me here today for Shadow Science. We're going to look at a couple of different concepts as they relate to shadows, and then I'm going to show you a couple of different activities that you can try at home that involve the use of shadows.
Concept 1. A shadow is blocked light that is unable to pass through a solid object. Transparent objects or objects that allow light to pass through them will not have a shadow.
So let's start by talking about what a shadow is. So a shadow is nothing but the light that cannot pass through an object. So if we take my elephant here, for example, and I have a light source here, and I shine my light source onto my elephant, you'll see that there's a shadow behind it. So the light that's not passing through the elephant creates a shadow. What do you think will happen if I take a see-through object or something transparent, like this jar here? We'll try the same experiment. So I'll use my light source and I'll shine it in front of my jar, and you'll notice that some areas don't have a shadow because they're allowing the light to pass through.
Concept 2. Multiple light sources create multiple shadows.
Multiple shadows can exist if you have multiple light sources. Let's take my body for example. You'll see here I have a shadow because of the light source that I have on my desk. If I add another light source, what do you think will happen? Do you see a second shadow? Why don't you go ahead and take a guess as to what would happen if we added a third light source?
Concept 3. The size of a shadow depends on the distance between a light source and an object.
Something else to think about when we're talking about shadows is the size of the shadow. The size of the shadow depends on the distance between the light source and the object. Let's use my elephant for another example. I'm going to take my light source, and I want you to take a look at what happens when I move my light source closer to the elephant and farther away. What happens to the shadow? Does it get bigger or smaller depending on how far my light source is?
Now let's have some fun with shadows. Our first activity is inspired by Robert Munsch's classic book, The Dark. In this activity, we'll have the dark taking over a scene that we draw. Now that our scene is drawn, let's make a dark puppet. Cut out an irregular shape on paper and tape it to a stick. Tape your scene up to a wall. Point your light source at the scene and experiment with your dark puppet. Will the dark take over a tiny corner of your scene or the whole thing? Make up a story to go along with your props. Let's move on to creating shadow art. Start by stacking, arranging, and rearranging a bunch of different objects in front of your light source. What kind of shapes and shadows do they make on the wall? Can you create an interesting sculpture or composition using just shadows? If you want to take this activity a step further, tape a piece of white or light colored paper onto your wall and trace the outlines of the shadows. Use coloring tools or art supplies to create a totally unique piece of art. For our final activity, we'll create a shadow puppet theater. First, grab your cardboard box and cut off any of the folds or flaps, so you're left with a square that is empty on both sides. If your box feels unstable, tape a couple of the cardboard flaps to the sides. Later, we will tape them down to our workspace and they will act as stabilizer wings. What's a puppet theater without puppets? You can create your own puppets by cutting shapes out of paper or cardstock and taping a stick to the back. Alternatively, you can search around your home for small toys or interesting objects to use as props in the theater. Set your theater up by taping the wings to your table or workspace. Using your fabric, napkin, or paper towel, tape a curtain to the side that is facing your audience. Orient your light source at the back of your theater so that it is facing your audience, and turn off any other lights in the room. Entertain your family and friends with an imaginative story that makes use of your puppets and props. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to check out our YouTube channel for more story times and story extension activities.